the release of Transformers Rise of the Beast this week in theaters, it's time to rank all 8 theatrically released Transformers movies from worst to best. This is all the Michael Bay films, this is Rise of the Beast, this is Bumblebee, and of course the 1980s Transformers animated film. I'm excited to be doing this because I just got done binging every single Transformers movie in 1 week, and I have some different opinions on this franchise, some that you're gonna hate, some that you might agree with, and that's okay because we're gonna have fun discussing it down below. But again, this is my opinion, this is my ranking. I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section, so leave your thoughts down there, hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into this. This is a fair warning, I may talk spoilers about each and every one of these movies just because that's the easiest way to talk about this, so if you haven't seen one of these, you are warned. Coming down at my number 8 is Transformers The Last Knight. What is there to say, but this is hands down one of the worst blockbusters I have ever seen in my entire life. Now, I dedicate myself to talking a lot more about pros in a film compared to the cons. This film is actually really hard to do that on, and I've only rewatched this film twice. Once in the theater, and I literally just got done watching it a couple days ago, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even finish it. I didn't really care to. A lot of that just comes down to the worst aspects of it. Talking about the good parts about it first, this is the most gorgeous looking Transformers film out of any single one of them. Bumblebee, even Rise of the Beast, the cinematography on this film is on a whole other level. The visual effects on this film are on a whole other level. This is, again, one of the best looking Transformers film, if not the best one yet. And you do have that great cinematography as well as that great visual effects. The action sequences in here are excellent. They are entertaining for what they are. It really just comes down to everything else. I have no idea what Michael Bay was doing here. I have no idea what the screenwriters were doing here. Coming off Age of Extinction, you kind of left to this nice knowledge of what they're going to do with Optimus Prime and where he's going. And overall, like, the story that they decided to go with had intriguing elements to it, and specifically what it meant for the Autobots, the Decepticons, the Transformers themselves. The problem with it all is it's held down by terrible storytelling, terrible characters that you don't give a fuck about, and including into that is a lot of just the humor. This is like Michael Bay parody of himself, and Six Underground is still his worst movie. Maybe. This is still his worst one. This is like Michael Bay parody on every extreme, whether it's the humor, the explosions, everything of that nature. There's not really a redeeming ability about this film. It's actually funny because the Butler robot, I think, is so annoying in this, but he's hands down like one of the cringiest and funniest things about the film. And I don't know if I laugh at the robot because I'm so pissed at the movie every time I've gone back to go watch it, or maybe I'm just like trying to find something to enjoy. You know you don't like a movie when you start nitpicking the smallest of shit, and it just doesn't make sense. Did I even mention yet the technical part of this with the aspect ratio shifting back and forth? It gives me a damn headache. It gave me a headache when I saw it back in the theaters, back when the film released, and it gives me one now. All these things that you can enjoy just as background music or to display when you go to Best Buy and be like, look how pretty the TV is. But that's it. Coming down at my number 7 now is Transformers the movie. This is the animated 1980s film that just rocks in a lot of different ways. Pretty much this film on up, I find some enjoyment in each and every one of these movies. And I remember watching this film as a kid and thoroughly enjoying it. Coming back as an adult, it doesn't hold up completely all the way. I wasn't completely nostalgic for this film. I just remember liking it and enjoying it for what it is because I liked the Transformers when I was younger a lot. I loved playing with the toys. This is like one of the definitions of taking all your toys and just playing around with them and finding fun ideas. There is a lot of intriguing ideas in this film, and I think overall the animation I kind of do miss. I think this is a blast from the past, a blast from the 80s. You got the touch, you got the power. If you know that line, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You got the touch! And in general, I think when you look at this movie, it's forgettable on a lot of bases. The story's kind of just lacking. The animation's awesome for the time period it was. The action is fun, and I love seeing just literally amounts of Transformers. They do have some human characters, and they're completely forgettable. But when I watched this movie, I was like, this is a lot of fun. And I like that the villain was Unicron. I actually liked how they used the villain. I also find it hilarious that Orson Welles was the voice of Unicron. No idea how they got him to be in this movie, but they did. And I think at one point in time before Netflix had released that one film of his, this was his last movie he ever made. Which is That's just crazy to think. I guess some people could consider this a Citizen Kane of Transformers movies. I don't have it higher up on my list just because I do enjoy all the others on this, but this animated film's fun. That's exactly what it is. I think they get rid of a lot of the other Transformers characters a little bit too early on because they do kill them off, and I know they bring them back, but it's just kind of like, what? I know they did that more as like, we gotta sell more toys, get all the toys out there, but it doesn't really fit for the story. I think overall, coming back years later, it does kind of harm it overall. Now, my number 6 is Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, which again, yeah, I admit it, I do like this movie. It's not terrible. I think again, The Last Night is the worst Transformers movie. This is a movie that was just heavily broken in a lot of different phases, primarily in the script and its storytelling devices, but I'll still go as far to say the story itself and what it's trying to set up with the mythology of the Witwikis and everything of that nature is still intriguing and I think works for what it needs to be. The film is broken in a lot of manners just because it feels a little bit repetitive in what the characters are trying to accomplish and do. And specifically this Allspark, all these kind of nonsense stuff, I mean, they're all mixing together for me. The plot of this film just does mix together with everything else. The thing that I enjoyed this film on is on a guilty pleasure level at times, specifically with like Shia LaBeouf's performance in here. Every single thing when he's like writing down all the elements in college, it's ludicrous, it's insane, I enjoy it.
About the stars.
And then you have a Transformer disguised as a human being trying to seduce Shia LaBeouf and just being completely weird and getting that Michael Bay humor. Now, I don't love that. I think the best thing about this film is it kind of, from the first film, which I think had too many characters, this one kind of pulls back just a hair. You still get a lot of characters, but not every single one, and it seems like a lot of the characters are more tightened and come together. And in the end of the day, when you come together in this film, I like seeing the action. There's no doubt about it. I love the twin robots. I love Bumblebee. I love Optimus Prime. I love what they're trying to do. That giant robot that's like on the pyramid that's like collided with a bunch of different things. That is sick. The visual effects for this film still work. Again, this is just a very broken film when it comes down to story. It's a movie that obviously came out during the last writer's strike. This is a great example of what happens when the writer's strike's going on. Support your writers. This film just did not have a finished script, and they were just trying to throw anything at the kitchen sink. Megan Fox and Shia LaBeouf are good in here. The action's awesome. I can enjoy this for what it is. I also have pure nostalgia for it because I really liked this one in the theaters when I was younger. And I still kind of do right now. Now, my number 5, though, is the brand new Transformers Rise of the Beast, which I think this one is going to be different for every single person who watches this film. Some people are probably going to have it higher. I could even see some people putting it lower, right above The Last Night. If you put The Last Night above this, I'm going to think you're crazy. The Beast, I think the best way to sum it up is that it's fun, it's amusing, it's entertaining, and it's good, but it's very forgettable. And it's forgettable in a lot of different ways, whether it is some of the characters, some of the plot devices, and specifically the story itself is exposition heavy. Almost every single piece of dialogue that is pushed out of someone's mouth is literally exposition to further out the story. And I've never, it's been a long time since I've seen a film do that. Exposition is okay depending on how you deliver it, and specifically how much you deliver it in a given time span, but this film, the humans are literally used for that. They're entertaining. I definitely like Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback for that, but God, it sucks because Dominique literally is used as the exposition heavy galore person. It even goes as far as to say sometimes the Maximals are used in that way too. But if you do push aside the forgettable story and the exposition there is still a lot of fun here. Like I mentioned with the 80s film, it's like picking up your toys, throwing them together, and making it some awesome battle action sequence in your brain and having that fun imagination. And I think if you're fans of Bumblebee's opening Cybertron scene, the third act of this will be one of your favorite things you've seen in a Transformers movie, because I will agree on that. I loved the third action set piece in here. I thought it was awesome. There's some weird things like Anthony Ramos's character Noah like turning into kind of a Power Ranger at one point. I didn't really dig that. And like a lot of weird stuff. Primarily the ending, like the very, very ending. Spoilers again, where Noah is recruited to be in the G.I. Joe. I know they take place technically in the same world. It's just that's just weird to me. I don't know. It kind of caught me off guard. But literally on this film, the Maximals are awesome. I love the design of the Maximals and specifically the Transformers they use in here. And the soundtrack's great. I love that it takes place in the 90s. There's a lot of good aspects to this. I just, in general, when you go and see a movie like this, it sucks to say that, like, usually I can enjoy a film for what it is and be like, man, this action's awesome, all this stuff. But while the action set pieces are awesome, it's the story that really is forgettable. And I usually don't care too much about a story in Transformers film. It's just, I think this one's itself, like, was lacking a lot of, like, intensity to it all. And I could just enjoy the choreograph, I can enjoy the camera angles, I can enjoy a lot of that stuff. I really wanted more from this film. I really wanted more from it. And I think Stephen Cable Jr. does a good job. I really just think in the end of the day, it was the script that actually failed everyone. But shout out to Mirage and Noah. I really actually thought Pete Davidson was great in the role as Mirage, and I really liked the voice performance he gave. Coming out at my number 4 is a film that I never thought in a million years would be even in the top 5 for Transformers films. I genuinely mean this. That is Transformers Age of Extinction. I just got done rewatching this one this week. This was my second time ever rewatching this film. The first time I saw this film, I hated it. I was so pissed off at it, and a lot of that was because the marketing lied in a lot of departments. The Shia was not in it. I thought Mark Wahlberg was a terrible new character. I hated the side characters like the boyfriend and his daughter. I'm not going to lie, I've come around on this film, and I have no idea why. Someone can smack me. Maybe I just need to be waking up. But this film was fun. And I think a lot of that can be said because of the state of blockbusters nowadays. Some are so forgettable that even in the instance that there is a lot of bad story elements to this film, there's a ton of bad story elements to it. There's a lot of repetition. This film is way too damn long. Like, way too long. Too many characters. Too many things going on. Too many jumping everywhere. Stanley Tucci's character is stupid. Hate it. It's dumb. Stop. But it's memorable. I mean, it's memorable to me. I really like the Autobots in here. I like the designs of them. I think it's awesome to see where they're at and kind of like what happened after the Battle of Chicago in the Dark of the Moon. I like the epilogue take of this entire film. I like the ideas that Michael Bay and the writers were trying to do in this. Is it perfectly made? No. By all means, this is a guilty pleasure film for me. But knowing where the Dinobots were going to show up when they do show up, I did think that was badass. I still think the Beast in the Rise of the Beast were used a lot better than how like Grimlock and them were used, but it was fun. I love seeing Optimus Prime ride on the battle with a giant dinosaur. I like seeing that the humans are against the Transformers. Specifically, they are aliens. For what happened in the Battle of Chicago, there are a lot of ideas like that. I don't know what it is. I think the biggest thing that I actually would change in this film is I would have cut out Mark Wahlberg's daughter character and the boyfriend character. Made it just solely him. He doesn't need a love interest. He doesn't need any of that. Just leave it on himself and he discovers this. And that's what takes him into the adventure. I think that would cut down a lot on the runtime. I think that would cut down on a lot of different elements. And even Stanley Tucci's character I would have touched up a little bit because it is interesting to see someone in the tech industry taking on Transformers because realistically, that is something that people will do today. I'm looking at you, Elon. A lot of different rich people out there, and probably people I'm not even mentioning that would study in Transformers and try to build your own. But I like Age of Extinction for what it is. It is a stupid, fun time, but it's one that I have not stopped thinking about this week. A lot of the action sequences, and what I can say is it's not forgettable. And like pretty much the rest of the films on this list, I don't think are forgettable. I think they're just fun and entertaining and a lot better in a lot of different ways. Because now at my number 3, we have the original Transformers film, which Michael Bay made and absolutely became one of my personalities as a kid. I loved watching this movie as a child. I think it's one of the coolest things. I guess I wasn't really a child. I was more of a teenager, but it kind of just came out of that perfect time. You have the Linkin Park music, you have the awesome score, and all of it just tying together perfectly. LaBeouf's an easy, likable protagonist. Megan Fox's character is a lot of fun, and their dynamics really well. It works perfect, in my opinion, there. It really just, again, comes down to the Transformers. Now, the reason that this one isn't a little bit higher, because I did debate on putting this higher just due to nostalgia, is my rewatch of this, I really hate a lot of the characters in this. There are way too many. They give too much time to Sam's parents. They give way too much time to the military. They give way too much time to those, like, nerdy scientists who are trying to do, like, all these different mumbo-jumbo. I don't even remember what their characters' names were. But all of that stuff was just kind of a waste of my time. And I just wanted to keep coming back to Shia, Megan Fox, and the robots. That's all I kept coming back to. And every time you do, you enjoy it The final fight scene is fantastic. I love how they did decide to stick Bumblebee as the main character, and it really becomes such a light in that shining darkness of everything else. I think Optimus Prime in here, his design is great. I love the way that the Transformers look, and I love the battles that they all take place in. Rest in peace to Jazz, because he, for me, at the time when I was a teenager, was my favorite character in this film.
I want to.
In this movie, that is pure nostalgia, and I think, bar none, is just one of those films that's always going to remain higher on this list than many others, just because of how fun it was. My number 2 is Transformers Dark of the Moon. I'm going to be honest, I went back and forth on putting this at my number 1. The reason I didn't is because I actually think the ending is quite abrupt, and while I do like the character of Carly, I think in this one, same thing like I mentioned for Mark Wahlberg, Shia just shouldn't have had a love interest in this. I don't think he was needed. I don't think it would have done anything different. If you take out Carly, you could have mixed it up that Patrick Dempsey was actually his boss and played on that entire thing. That could have been a cooler dynamic in my ideas. Carly's boss being a bad guy working for the Decepticons. But this film, I think this is like straight up almost all action it feels. And the Battle of Chicago is hands down my favorite action set piece in the Transformers world. It is awesome. It's emotional. It feels like a nice conclusion to everything that we've been building up to. And while I do think Age of Extinction is a nice little epilogue after that to kind of continue and try and start that next thing going big, the film itself went badass in every way. And I think, again, it just doubles down on what we liked in the Michael Bay Transformers films, corrects a lot of the issues in Revenge of the Fallen, doesn't have too many different subplots, doesn't have too many different characters. It just has enough. And it does touch on that human beings probably would work with Decepticons to kind of, further out, because the whole plan of bringing Cybertron into their world and turning their world into Cybertron and enslaving humans is something that many humans would probably be afraid that the Transformers would do. I can't get enough of this. I love that Sentinel Prime is found. I love the way that this kind of ties into the human history of what is on the moon. There's just so much cheesy goodness in here that Dark of the Moon for me has always been one of my favorites, and it's just such a good time. That action sequence of Prime taking out everyone on the bridge was fantastic. You do feel the stakes in here. You do feel the deception. You do feel the darkness of it all, and for me, the Dark of the Moon is the best Transformers film from Michael Bay. At my number 1, it's Bumblebee. And again, I went back and forth on placing this at my number 1 or my number 2. A lot of that being that I do think that this film doesn't find the perfect balance between Bumblebee and the humans, but primarily that's a lot of because Bumblebee is really much the only Transformer in this film. Where, like, the one thing I can give a shout out to with Rise of the Beast is it did find the perfect balance between humans and Autobots, just didn't have a good story to it. Bumblebee for me is literally the live action interpretation of the Iron Giant. There's no doubt about that. Haley Steinfeld is the kid in there, and Bumblebee is the Iron Giant, and I think that is one of the smartest things that Travis Knight, who is a really great director, if you haven't seen Kubo and the Two Strings, I highly recommend that, but what his idea was for Bumblebee was a sweet, short, small-scale story in the Transformers universe that touches on why Bumblebee does like human beings. And I think that just touches into that. It touches into that gratifying nature. And when you start off the opening of this film with an amazing sequence on Cybertron, I'm very excited for the animated Transformers film next year. Transformers 1, because of that, I think that's going to be a really fun time. You kick off in such a badass way, and the second that Bumblebee lands on this world, you're just like, this is it. This is awesome. And you're already blasted into a good mood. And then you get Haley Steinfeld, who is easily the most likable character in this franchise. I think it goes hand in hand with her and Shia LaBeouf for me in the roles. And I really loved her dynamic with Bumblebee and what it really meant to her and how pretty much he was her first friend, and specifically how it was to grieve and get over the loss of someone, as we see that she's trying to get over with her father. It has 80s nostalgia all over the damn film that is purely in, and the final action sequence with Bumblebee is a lot of fun. The only downside to this is, while I do like John Cena, I think he's gotten a lot better as an actor, he feels like he's in a Michael Bay movie, and the rest of this movie is trying to be elevated to something else. And that's about it. I would have gotten rid of that whole mumbo-jumbo, or maybe just reorganized it in a little bit of a different way. But Bumblebee is still hands down the best Transformers film. And that's my ranking of all 8 Transformers theatrically released films. Let me know down below what your guys' thoughts are on this. I cannot wait to read your guys' ranking. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe for more. And of course, until next time, stay classy.